In today's episode of the podcast, we're talking knitting pet peeves. So if that sounds like just your cup of tea, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. It has been about a year since the last time I did a knitting hot takes or unpopular opinions or controversial knitting opinions video. And for whatever reason, I feel like going into fall, it's just that time. And so we're going to be doing that today, but I'm doing this a little bit different as it compares to my previous videos. And if you would like to check out those videos, definitely follow the link down below. That will take you over to where I have those previous videos. But for today, what I decided to do was take to Instagram and throw out a kind of a survey asking folks to share their knitting hot takes or pet peeves or controversial knitting opinions or what have you, and share them over there. And we had a lot, and I shared as many as I could. I think I shared almost every single one over on Instagram. Now, from that large pool of responses, I pulled out 9 that I felt would be really worthy of discussion for today's video. Now, I've addressed a vast majority of the ones that came through in previous versions of this kind of video. So if you would like to hear me talk about some of those other ones, definitely watch those other videos. Today, I'm hitting on ones I haven't really addressed much. And what I want to do with today's video is not only share with you 9 knitting pet peeves or unpopular knitting opinions or whatever from viewers. I'm going to share one of my own, but I'm also going to give you some feedback and some perspective on why folks might feel that way and why folks might feel the opposite, and hopefully give you a little bit to take away from this video other than just people's opinions. I feel like it's a little bit more helpful, a little bit more educational, and overall just maybe more valuable. So it'll be fun, but it will also be an opportunity to maybe learn a little something new and gain a new perspective. Now, as with the majority of my videos of late, I have a Noteboard for everything I'm sharing with you in today's video. So the unpopular opinions or the pet peeves or whatever will be featured here completely anonymously. They are always anonymous. And then any kind of links that I share here or information that I share here will be linked over on that Noteboard. If you would like access to that, all in one place with links and photos and everything there, head over to the Wool Needles Hands Patreon. You can have access to that just by visiting the Patreon. You do not have to be a paid member of Patreon. However, if you would like to provide some additional support and you find that the additional content over there is right up your alley, it's $5 a month and your support is greatly appreciated. Now, I want to mention here, just so we all are on the same page, a hot take is like a real quick and dirty opinion that might be controversial, might be unpopular, but it's just your opinion. You know, when you boil it all down, that's what you're left with about a particular issue. It's just a fast and dirty opinion about something. We all have them, right? And then you have your pet peeves, which are little things about your hobby, being knitting today, that rub you the wrong way or, you know, grind your gears, that sort of thing. Now, like I said, I pulled out 9 to talk about today. I could have just sat here and had this be a reactionary video where I scroll through all of them that came through and just kind of react to them in the moment. And I think that's a lot of fun. And that's what that's what the other previous videos are more like. However, today, like I said, I wanted this to be a little bit more constructive and I wanted to boil it down and leave you with something to take away. So we're going to start. I have my Noteboard in front of me. I'm going to pop up the opinion that was left, or I should say the submission that was left up on the screen so that you can see it. And then we'll go from there. And again, these are always going to be anonymous. The first one that I received, actually the first and second kind of piggyback off of one another in kind of a contrary way. So the first one that I have here says, knitting patterns are too long. Now, this is in reference to a knitting pattern being too detailed, just too much to the knitting pattern. Maybe it's a lot of pages that you have to print out or a lot of pages that you have to scroll through to get to the meat of the project. I can see where a person would think this, and there have been times where I've downloaded a pattern and perhaps in that instance I wanted to print it out and it's page after page. Brooklyn Tweed patterns are like that. Michelle Wong patterns are like that. They're very lengthy. There's lots of paragraph. I don't really know how to word that. I mean, it's not just like a recipe instructions. There's lots of information there and text that you have to really sift through. And I can see where some folks would find that that's too much. And in some instances, I felt like, wow, this is a lot. And sometimes it can overwhelm you and make things seem more complicated than they actually are. But another comment came in shortly after that one, in fact, and it says the pattern creators assume you know what the heck they are talking about. Be specific, people. Now, these are the folks who appreciate those really long, detailed patterns. They want essentially not like their hand to be held because they can't help themselves, but they just want to know what they're doing. They want things to be relaxing and peaceful, and they don't want to have anything up in the air. They just want to know what they're supposed to do so they can complete the project successfully. And I completely understand that. I feel like there's two sides to the coin here. Me personally, I kind of fall in the middle, unless of course it's a pattern that has some nuance to it that, you know, requires certain techniques to accomplish. You really would like to have all of that right there so you don't have to go off and search for things. However, I'm not a stranger to searching for techniques that are offered up in patterns but not necessarily described. That doesn't bother me. I kind of enjoy the hunt, if you will. However, I think I can totally see both sides of this coin. I linked to an article over on the Millinote, and this is by Sister Mountain. I really love this website. I think she provides a lot of really useful insight into pattern writing and knitwear design, and I actually mention her website again for another comment coming later. But she has an article that's called, or a post that's called The Art of Clear and Concise Pattern Writing. And she goes into kind of the whole nature of that process and why it's really important for things to be clear and concise. But she does address as well some of the issues that might come from being maybe a little too detailed, the overwhelm that might occur, and how some people might find it to be unapproachable. And so I feel like she gives a really great kind of broad perspective on that particular issue. Again, I will link to that and you can definitely check it out, but it is by Sister Mountain and it is called The Art of Clear and Concise Pattern Writing. And based on the two opinions here, knitting patterns are too long and pattern creators assume you know what the heck they're talking about, you can see that there's two sides to this coin, and there are some types of patterns that are for some people and some types of patterns that are for others. And ain't that just always the way? This next one, I feel like I have a little bit more experience with, and I can provide my perspective or my point of view on this a little bit better now, and that is that test knitting is overrated. I received this one I think I maybe just received that once. And then I received another one that was along the lines of not requiring so much from your test knitters as it is an unpaid position. But the one I want to talk about today, because the test knitters working for pay and all of that was addressed in a previous video, so you can find that in one of the previous videos. But for today, this one that says test knitting is overrated. I would love to pick this person's brain because I feel like there's more to this opinion than that. On its face, looking at it like this, we just assume that this person thinks there's no value to test knitting. And I tend to think that's not the case. I would like to know a little bit more about what this person is thinking in terms of, I don't mean it to sound like what are they thinking, but where this person's mind's at when it comes to feeling that it's overrated. Now, I have released 2 patterns in the last year, and both of those were test knit in quite a big way. And I felt like that experience in having the pattern tested, especially because you have lots of sizes, right? So both of those patterns offer 9 different sizes, and you need to have each of those sizes ideally tested to some extent. And that's going to require, that's at least 9 people that are fitting into those sizes that can test the pattern, because you really need to make sure that the pattern works for all of those sizes. And that's not something that you can do on your own feasibly. You would have to knit 9 different versions of that yourself, and that's really difficult to do, but test knitters can help you do that. Tech editors even aren't going to do that for you. All they're doing is making sure your math is lining up and everything is legible and clear and concise and what have you. But test knitting is where all of what's going on in that pattern is applied in the real world. And if we're going to have multiple sizes, as all patterns have, there's multiple sizes there, you really do need to have that tested. So I would definitely not agree that test knitting is overrated, but I'm leaving that opinion open because I feel like this person probably has more to say there. But I would love to know more on that, why this person thinks that it's overrated. If you share that opinion, and please, if you share any of these opinions here and want to maybe expound on them a little bit more down in the comment section, even if I don't agree, this isn't a, it's a safe place. You can leave your opinions down below. Let us know what your thoughts are, because I would like to know the other side of the coin in that respect. Because I have to assume this person's not alone in that opinion. However, my opinion is that I did find it to be very valuable, so that I knew everything worked out in terms of proportions and sizes and instructions and all of that across a range of sizes. So I definitely think that it is rated the way it is for a reason. Now, Sister Mountain also has another post, and it says, is your knitting pattern truly ready? The critical role of test knitters in the design process. I read through this one actually when I was designing both the Franken sweater and the little black tee, when I was going through all of that process, just to make sure I was doing everything that I needed to do before publishing those patterns. And you might hear a train. Do you hear that? Yeah, the train's going by. We have a train that goes by just down the road from us. And I felt like it provided really good insight into how to know for sure that your pattern is ready to be published. And she does make the argument for test knitting and why test knitting is so valuable. So if you would like some additional insight on that beyond what I'm providing here, you can check out that article from Sister Mountain. And honestly, all of her posts are fantastic if you're trying to break into knitwear design. Okay, this next one I have thoughts on. I don't have any article to send you to or links or anything. I just have some thoughts and possibly maybe some ideas of how this can be resolved. I don't know. Okay. I have thoughts. And it says, I don't want shawls that call for 1.5 skeins of sock yarn, 1 or 2. I don't want useful leftovers. Now you have to know going into this, I agree with this person to a point, because I'm one of those people who leftovers of anything just gives me a little bit of, I don't know, it makes things feel cluttered. I don't want leftovers. I love the feeling of using everything. When we make dinner, and we all sit down to eat dinner, and dinner is completely gone when dinner is over and there's no leftovers, I love that feeling. I love just knowing we consumed everything that we prepared. There's nothing left over. There's no potential for waste. And I love that. And that's just because I just don't like having a lot of stuff sitting around. That's me. Some folks love to have little leftovers. They love the possibilities that come with leftovers. They love the idea of using up little bits and bobs in projects that are a little bit more scrappy. And I can totally see that. However, I do think it would be interesting if designers focused their designs in some respect, not all of their designs. This is very hard to do this. It's very contrived, but some designs where maybe their focus is to try to design the item to use all of the yarn. So if it's going to require 2 skeins, it uses all of the yarn. Now, this is all going to be very individual, as people will have different gauges and they'll be using different yarn than what's required in the pattern. And so things might just go differently for them, which would maybe render the whole thing pointless because they would end up not using all of the yarn anyway. So it's all very case by case, right? But it would be kind of cool if there, I don't know, like if there was a pattern book out there, and I feel like now that I'm saying this out loud that there probably is, patterns that use up all the yarn, or leftover free knitting patterns. I just really don't think that you can make that guarantee, But there are those like recipes for food or meals. There's recipes out there that make it so like you have maybe 4 different recipes, and all of those recipes use one set of groceries that you purchase, and by the time you've made it through all of those, you've used up everything that you purchased at the grocery store, so that there's nothing left over. So that's something. I totally understand this person's like gripe here, I guess, if you can call it that having little leftovers is kind of annoying for me, but I just know it's not like that for everybody. And it is interesting to kind of think like how you could avoid this. And I don't know how it could be completely avoided, to be honest. But let me know your thoughts, because I think that one is definitely an interesting one. I think folks are getting tired in a big way of having little leftovers of sock yarn. I really do think that that's what's happening. There's like a fatigue among people where it's like they see these little baskets and bowls and whatnot of little bits of leftover sock yarn, and they're just kind of over it. And I get that. I can totally feel that. So. Okay, this next one is cool. I get where it's coming from, but it's kind of funny because the next Fiber for the People shop update, which I will be announcing in the newsletter coming up soon, I am featuring one type of yarn, one yarn base, and it's new and it's kind of a novelty, but it's beautiful and luxurious. And it is a boucle 100% non-superwash merino boucle yarn, and it's a bulky weight. Just give me a minute here while I set it up so you can kind of see it a little bit better. How beautiful is that? Is that beautiful or what? And it's so lovely and soft. And I wanted to get my hands on this. I wanted something really scrumptious and cozy for the fall. And so I ordered a bunch of this to offer in the shop for a really special update, and it's bulky weight. And the opinion here is that garments made of bulky or super bulky yarn aren't wearable. Sad, because they go so much faster. Now, I totally get it, because there are times where I see a super bulky pattern and I think to myself, like, yeah, like it's gorgeous, but I just wouldn't throw it on. It would require a lot of thought before I put that garment on. I would have to really consider what I'm doing, where I'm going, what am I wearing it with before I put that garment on. But that, for me, is primarily with super bulky weight yarn and super bulky weight patterns. Bulky weight patterns, like with yarn like this, that's a little different. And what I did here to kind of not prove my point, right, but just provide you with a little bit of background, is I linked here to a Ravelry search, and I'm going to open up the link right now so I can navigate to it. Okay, so I just popped up a Ravelry search that I have saved for bulky clothing patterns. Now, I'm focusing on clothing here because I feel like of all of the things, and I almost think the two, if I go back and look at that opinion, garments. Yeah, we're talking about garments here, so I want to make sure I'm on the right track. And so I did a search for bulky weight clothing, and I have, like you see here, 23,961 matches. And the reason why I did this is because I wanted to show just how wearable many of these garments. I mean, I don't really see any here that I would consider not wearable. So I'm scrolling down through here. All of these garments that you see kind of at a glance use a bulky weight yarn. I get it. There's no super bulky here because I do kind of tend to agree. Super bulky can be harder to wear. However, when you look at this, like we have the Weekend Slipover by Petite Knit, very wearable for colder months. Super cute. Yeah, it's a bulky weight yarn, excuse me. However, it looks very wearable to me. And then if I go back, let's find something that's not a mohair pairing. I know we kind of get tired of that. That would be kind of a bulky weight. That looks like it's being paired with mohair. I mean, mohair, it's everywhere, right? And that was another one of the opinions. But I really want to find one that's not made with mohair. Let's look at this. Okay, so this is by Midori Hirose, and this is a really cute kind of it looks like it's a batwing cardigan. But looking at that, even with its kind of bulkiness and a little bit more on the novelty side, I don't know if you would call it that, more of like a statement piece, it's still very wearable. So I would encourage you, if you would like to kind of dive down that rabbit hole of bulky weight patterns that are actually wearable, I would follow the link that I have here to some of these patterns. Like, look at this. That's a bulky weight sweater. And that looks amazing. Like, I would throw that on and be very happy with my garment choice. How beautiful. What is that? Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. What is that called? The Frankie sweater? I love it. So cute. And it's bulky weight yarn. Yeah, so I don't know. So I kind of feel like, no, I think bulky weight patterns are absolutely wearable. It doesn't become unwearable or more difficult to wear until you get into the super bulky realm. In my opinion, and with my preferences, that's kind of just where my head's at with that. So check out this link to this Ravelry search if you'd like to kind of see what I'm seeing here, because there are lots of really beautiful options here with bulky weight yarn, even color work. Come on, I love it. That's really beautiful. What? Okay, no rabbit holes. Back to business. Now you've seen it. Okay, I love this next one because I really do kind of believe this sometimes, and that is pulling from the center of the cake is the wrong and messy way to do things. Yeah, I feel that way, but you know what? I have a reason for pulling from the center. I'm going to show you. Hold on, Bert. Okay, this is my fleece sweater. I'm going to set it over here. I'm going to show that later on an upcoming episode of the podcast. But the reason why I am pulling from the center of all of these little yarn balls is because I'm keeping all of the yarn balls in my bag like this And when I pull from them, I want to make sure that the wraps of yarn on the outside don't get tangled up with one another. Because if I were pulling from multiple balls, 2 balls at the same time, and the yarn was unwrapping from the outside, they would eventually kind of get coiled up together. And so being able to pull from them like this, where they all come out of their little middles, it works for me. However, I have had yarn barf issues where you're pulling from the middle of the ball and it's a hot mess because it just all comes out in one big barf ball, and you have, you know, like I said, a hot mess. And I believe that that's a problem. It can be a very big problem. And so if you're working with one ball of yarn, or you're not pairing anything together, pulling from the outside is kind of nice because it keeps things from falling in and imploding, and it just kind of comes off the thing like this. And you can get one of those little, I don't know what they are, but they're like, you stick the ball on top of this like spindle, and then it spins around and the cake spins. There's lots of little doodads that you can get if you don't want to pull from the center. But I do agree that it can be treacherous. It can be dicey. I linked to a Reddit thread that is called "To Center Pull or Not to Center Pull Your Yarn from the Skein," and I read through it and I thought it was hilarious. Hilarious in that there are so many differing opinions with so many different reasons for doing either of those things. I linked to it. Check it out. It's a really interesting thread, and it provides insight into both sides of that particular opinion. Okay, this next one is about project bags. Now, project bags are definitely a source of contention, or maybe a little bit polarizing in terms of to use a project bag or not to use a project bag. I know some folks want to just use a plastic Ziploc bag, and some folks want something like what I just showed you here, which is a very, you know, is a luxury item. It's a leather tote bag, what have you. I definitely like to have really nice project bags to hold my projects. This person's opinion says project/tote bags perpetuate hoarding or general disorganization after a project is done. Now, okay, so my particular opinion on this is that I do like to have a nice bag that my knitting project is sitting in, because I like it. It makes it an inviting project. You see your project bag over there, everything just looks nice. It feels very elevated, and it just adds to your experience. If you'd like to hear me talk all about this and provide you with some really inspiring project bag ideas, you can find this video called "Stylish Knitting Bags and Baskets That Are Nice to Have." It's a video I filmed 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years ago now. Check that one out, see if it's for you. But I do really like to have a nice project bag. However, I do think you need to keep it to a limit. Honestly, you should have however many projects you're comfortable going at one time. You shouldn't have a number of project bags. Okay, I'm gonna go back. You should do what you want to do. Okay, but if I had to like speak to this person's opinion, I guess I would say I could see how having a lot of project bags that, you know, it surpasses the number of projects you have going at any one time is just excessive, I guess. And perhaps it does, like anything else in excess, lead to disorganization and hoarding. I don't know. I don't think in every case you're going to have a hoarding problem, but I guess you could say it's like a person who has too many handbags, or just a lot of handbags. Maybe that can become a problem. It really just matters on how you handle it and how organized you are. And I'm not one to say what you should or shouldn't have in terms of things that you enjoy and that bring you joy. But yeah, I mean, I guess I could see where for some people having an awful lot of a particular item can lead to disorganization, overwhelm, and maybe perpetuate hoarding if they already have a hoarding problem. I don't know. I love really nice project bags. Like I said, it elevates and adds to the craft, and that's just me. Those who like to just use reusable shopping bags or Ziploc bags for their projects and that works for them, that's great too. Really, to each their own, especially with something like that. But definitely check out that video, because if you are into project bags or baskets and fun things like that, you might really like that one. Okay, this next one was pretty short and sweet, and it just said no neck shaping. I think that this person is saying their pet peeve is when a pattern for like a garment, essentially a sweater, has no neck shaping. And I 100% agree. It does, well, I don't know if it's like a pet peeve of mine, but I do prefer neck shaping. I feel like a sweater looks better with neck shaping, whether it's using short rows or using the staggered start method. I do think some kind of neck shaping needs to be there. And I think that that's what this person is saying with their opinion, no neck shaping, is that they don't like it when a pattern doesn't provide instructions for neck shaping. I have 2 videos where I talk about this. I have a video called The Better Neckline, and it says, is this the best neckline for your next sweater project? And I talk about the staggered start method for shaping the neck of your sweater. But I also have a video called Short Rows, I Have Questions. And this is a video where I talk about short row neck shaping and ask or pose some questions about that process. But I also give some additional insight into why short rows are used for neck shaping, and I provide a lot of resources that you can kind of dive down that rabbit hole yourself. That gives a little bit about my personal insight about neck shaping, but when it comes to a sweater, I absolutely believe a sweater needs to have some kind of neck shaping that allows the front of the neck to come down a little bit and stay up a little higher in the back to accommodate the natural shape of a chest and back and shoulders in any body, really, to be honest. And I think it's so important. So when I do see that a sweater pattern does not come with neck shaping instructions and it is just a reversible neck that can be worn both forwards and backwards, I guess those are just ones I steer clear of because I just don't like. Or I don't steer clear of them. In the case of my fleece sweater, I just modify the pattern to include neck shaping for my preferences. So there is that. But yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan of shapeless necklines in sweaters. Okay, this next one was interesting. It's not really something I've heard of before. I guess I've kind of heard of this. I've heard of this in with different words. I've not heard of this wording before, but the person says the term anti-fat tax, I understand and appreciate the theory. Now, in the Milano, I provide a few links for this one. I provide a link that explains the anti-fat tax as it relates to yarn businesses such as mine. Fiber for the People is a hand-dyed yarn business. So this is a post that talks about what this anti-fat tax is as it relates to that, but as it relates to the fiber community, just to give you a little bit of background on that. And essentially what it is it is a volume discount that is given by yarn businesses for larger quantities of yarn. Okay, so if we backpedal a little bit, a fat tax, let's just go to fat tax and take out the anti for just a second. A fat tax, which I really don't like this phrasing, but that's how it's used. But what that is a tax that is applied to the purchase of unhealthy goods and foods, right? So if you have really unhealthy foods, junk foods, soda, candy, whatever, that in some places there is an additional tax applied to those to make them less desirable or more cost prohibitive to help encourage healthier eating habits. So that's what I've heard of a fat tax. Now, an anti-fat tax, based on the article that I'm reading here, that comes from perfectlyknotted.com, anti-fat tax discount roundup. It sounds like what it is it's a volume discount applied to larger quantities of yarn so that folks who need more yarn to knit a particular garment don't feel like they are being kind of essentially taxed for their size. Okay, that is based on what I read in this particular article. And actually it says here, it says fat tax is experienced when items of a larger size are more expensive than their smaller counterparts. Now, fat tax as it relates to the fiber community is what this person is saying. There is no such thing as an actual fat tax that you're going to see on a receipt when you purchase yarn from someone, okay? And I hope that that's not what people walk away from this article thinking, that if a person is buying 12 skeins of yarn to complete whatever project it is, whether it's a sweater for themselves or a blanket or whatever, there's nothing at the bottom that says you've been charged an additional fat tax. Like that's not how that works. What it is it's a cost prohibitive experience that a person has if they are buying 12 skeins of yarn because they are knitting a cardigan for themselves, whereas some folks knitting the same cardigan in a much smaller size are only buying 6 skeins of yarn. Okay, that's kind of what it is. It's the fact that they have to pay more for more yarn for essentially the same project. And this person, in their opinion, mentions that the anti-fat tax, which is what yarn companies are doing by offering volume discounts, is she appreciates that and understands the theory. Now, I understand the theory too, and I can see where people would really appreciate that when they know that the more yarn they buy from a particular purveyor of yarn, the bigger the discount they're going to get. Okay, so when I look at this, I go down and she's showing all of the different yarn companies that provide this particular discount. And so let's just grab one at random. Okay, so just here, this is Terrapin Fiberworks, offers a scaled quantity discount for larger projects to improve accessibility. And what they're doing here is 4 to 5 skeins, $1 off per skein, 6 to 7 skeins, $2 off per skein, 8 to 9 skeins, $3 off per skein, and then 10 plus skeins is $4 off per skein. So if this company is selling 10 skeins of yarn at $30 a pop, that's $300, and then that's $40 off of that. So that's an entire skein and a third that they get for free if they purchase 10 plus skeins. And this is what in business, this is what you call a volume discount. The more you buy, the more you save. You hear about this all the time. It's a marketing tactic to help drive sales. And that's business, right? And people have a choice to provide a volume discount. Now, Fiber for the people in my business, with the amount of volume, with my volume, I do not offer a volume discount. And I have reasons for that coincide with my volume of sales, or I should say my volume of units, I guess you could say. I just choose not to offer a volume discount. However, businesses offer that, and these are some businesses, and if you go to this, and I link to this in the Millinote, who are offering a volume discount, and they're labeling it I don't know if all of them are labeling it an anti-fat tax, but it looked like sweater quantity discounts. Buy 6 skeins, get the 7th free. Yeah, so there's lots of different volume discounts that are being offered from these particular yarn companies here that you can look into if that's something that interests you. And I didn't really know that I knew volume discounts were a thing, especially in yarn businesses, but I didn't know that it was referred to as an anti-fat tax. And I thought that was interesting. Now, what I'm providing here, and because there's a list over there of yarn companies that are offering this volume discount, I think it's important to remember that those companies that are on that list are offering that volume discount because it fits with their business model. It seems to work for them. It works for them. There's a lot of yarn companies that aren't on that list, and it's not necessarily because they aren't offering a volume discount. Maybe this particular list just doesn't have everybody yet. But just because a company does not offer a volume discount, I wouldn't say that it's because they don't want to provide assistance to people buying lots of yarn. It's not that they don't want to incentivize folks who want to purchase more. There's reasons why small businesses don't offer volume discounts. Sometimes it brings the profit margin too low. Sometimes they just don't make enough to justify a volume discount because no one person can purchase that kind of volume in any one order. Okay, so real small batch yarn dyers and things like that. So I provided a link to an article called The Importance of Volume Discounts, and it talks about how volume discounts are really great for a small business or for businesses in general. Not to mention the article here about this anti-fat tax discount and where you can find it, which yarn companies are offering it. And then I also provided an article here about not giving a volume discount outside of the context of yarn and an anti-fat tax, but just why some businesses would choose not to give a volume discount, so that there's a little bit of understanding there on both sides of this particular argument, even though I would say this particular opinion. However, the term anti-fat tax, I understand and appreciate the theory. Based on this person's opinion here, I agree. I understand and appreciate the theory of a volume discount. I feel like referring to something as a fat tax and then referring to something as an anti-fat tax, I don't know if that's necessary. I think if you're trying to make something more accessible to people financially, it doesn't matter what reason that is. I think you either are making it accessible to people, no questions asked, financially speaking, or you're just not offering that option for whatever reasons you have as a business owner to not offer that option. Whether it's to make it like an anti something, whether it's to kind of like, I don't know, subvert a paradigm. I don't know so much about that. I feel like the label is not great. but definitely making something a little bit more financially accessible by way of a volume discount. Yeah, I think that's a great option for a lot of people. And it is something I have considered in the past, especially when I was dyeing sweater quantities, which I no longer do. And there was a very brief period of time where I did offer one, but for various different reasons in my own business model, I discontinued doing that. But if you would like to find some yarn dyers who are doing it and get your hands on some yarn at a discounted rate using a volume discount, which I guess in this case is being referred to as an anti-fat tax, I linked to that article down below and you can learn more about it there. Okay, last but not least, I get to share with you my own personal knitting fiber arts related pet peeve. And this is going to take us over to Ravelry. I've talked about this before, and in fact, I have an entire video where the whole video is not about this, but I have a video where I share really great patterns, sweater patterns for men. And I talk a little bit about this issue in that video as well. My pet peeve is that when you want to search for a pattern for a man like my husband, you want to be able to go to Ravelry and filter your search so that you see photographs of sweaters featured on a man, okay? A male form that you can see, and it's a little bit more relatable as it relates to knitting a sweater for your husband, or in this case, my husband. And it's always kind of bugged me a little bit that it's really difficult to do that. And I want to show you what I'm talking about here because I think it's easier to show you to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. So we're going to go over here to Ravelry. I am going to record my screen and we're going to get right at it. Okay, so I'm just at the Ravelry browse section. I'm going to reset everything here. Actually, I think it already is. Yeah, so we're good. Okay, so just by scrolling through, you can see there's an overwhelming, I don't see any of these. Every item here, and I know there's some accessories that are kind of neutral territory, almost every single item, I think everything but one, is shown on a woman, okay? So we know that there's a disproportionate amount of patterns on Ravelry for or marketed for a woman, right? Women. But now Stephen West is here. Yeah, he's right there. But if you have a husband or a partner, or you have some man in your life that wants a sweater for a man, it's really difficult to go here and really filter it down so that you can see that. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm gonna go down here along the side. This is our filter section over here. And I'm gonna go down to age, size, fit, and right here it says gender. I'm gonna click male. And what that shows me is that what I would assume is that it's going to show me patterns that are for a male or could be worn by a male. And I should be able to look at the image and there should be some sense of relatability as, in terms of knitting this garment for a man, okay? So it says I have 76,698 options. So I'm gonna go back up here and we're just gonna scroll through. Oh, and you know what I should do here? Let's go to clothing only. Just clothing, okay? Because that's kind of what I'm referring to here. Okay, so now I'm going through and now sure, there will be men out there who can look at this and say that they know sweater number 18 is a great one. They can see here that this is something they would want to knit, and maybe they can find relatability in the photos that are provided here, okay? However, I know this in terms of like me searching for a sweater I think my husband would like, and even for some men that have reached out to me too, saying it's really hard to find photographs of things on Ravelry that feel relatable and that even though it says it's for a man, that I can really find that connection with. Now this sweater here, sweater number 18, is marketed or filtered for a male. It says right here, male, female, and unisex, okay? Now, I have no problem with that, because this sweater is one that you probably, there's nothing, you can wear it if you want, it's fine. But what I wish I saw more of, if I go back, I wish you see in the results patterns that are marketed or filtered for both male and female. I wish they showed photographs of that item on both a male figure and a female figure so that those folks that are intending on knitting this item for a male body can look at it and see how that would fit. So if I go here, for example, the field sweater, it's filtered out for both male and it's unisex and female. But if I look at the pictures here that are provided by the designer to show you, to give you insight into this pattern, there are no pictures of this sweater shown on a male, okay? On a man. That, to me, would help me get a picture of what this would be like on my husband, let's say, for example. Now, some people, that might not be an issue, and that's fine. But for me, it does kind of become a little bit of an issue because you think you're trying to filter things out here. You want it to be for men. And yes, I know, like, for example, the Cozy Classic Raglan is considered a unisex design, and there are men who have knit this sweater. I get that. But if I click on this, as I scroll through this to look at the photographs that are provided by the designer of this unisex male-female pattern, I'm seeing all female figures here, and I'm not seeing any of this particular sweater on the figure of, like, on a masculine figure that I could relate to as it relates to, like, my husband, okay? And I feel like, to me, I just wish it were different. I wish if this sweater were intended to be worn by both men and women, which is great if that's the case. I don't see why that shouldn't be the case. I would just love to see it on a male form, on a masculine figure, okay? Because the shape of the body is different, and I could get a better idea of how it would fit on my husband. So that it just kind of bugs me a little bit. Now, of course, like, we have something over here. This is the Moby sweater by Petite Knit. Now, Petite Knit has a Moby sweater for women, and she has a Moby sweater for men, and this particular listing obviously shows the Moby sweater on a man. It's only filtered for a man and unisex. It's not filtered for both men and women. Now, it is filtered as unisex, and it is absolutely a unisex sweater, and I think if it's being filtered for that, she should just have both of these patterns together and then show a picture of her wearing it and her husband wearing it, who I think that's who that is. But more importantly, it shows me this man's sweater on a man. It's just much easier to get an idea about how that pattern would work for, say, my husband. Now, I could go to the projects and find there, if there are some men that are knitting this, and then use that as an example to help give me an idea. But I just feel like if it's being filtered that way and with the intention of reaching men and women, I just kind of think that it should also offer a photograph of that sweater sample on a man, so you can have a little bit of a better idea of how that would work. Now, what I did is I found, and this is not an exhaustive list, this is not a complete list, okay? But I did find some examples here of patterns that are unisex for men and women that show the sweater in the photos on the pattern page on both a man and a woman. So the first one that I have here is the Touchstone pattern by Ruth Bulkins. This is a really lovely crew neck sweater with a really nice stripe detail. It is filtered for both men, women, and all three, men, women, and unisex. And you can see in the photos, there's a man there, and there's a woman, there's a masculine form and a feminine form. You can get an idea of how those sweaters fit both of those shapes, essentially. And I know all shapes are different, but when it comes to, like, the shoulders and the length of the torso and all of that for a man as it relates to a woman, this just gives a little bit of a better idea. Another really good one is Stick Season by Rebecca Clow. She has this shown on both herself and a man. I'm not sure who that is. That's neither here nor there, but we have a female form and a male form, and it's insightful, gives you some perspective on how that sweater would fit. And there might be some additional instructions in the pattern for the men's version and the women's version, but it just shows you here and gives you a little bit of something you can relate to a bit, right? If you're trying to find a pattern for a man. Okay. Another one is the Old Fashioned by Maxim Sear. Now, this pattern page only has one photo in it showing this cardigan on a woman. This, to me, is a sweater that is, there's a very masculine vibe happening here. You can see it in the photo here. He's, drinking an Old Fashioned, and he's wearing this cardigan and all of this. It's marketed to both female and male and unisex. And it shows it on a woman here, and then it shows it on men here. And then it's Maxim and it's really cute photos. But I appreciate that they threw in a photo showing this design on a female form. And that emphasizes the fact that this is definitely a sweater that can be worn by both. And this is how it would look on a female form. Okay. Another option is the Fitu pattern by Belen Fernandez. Gorgeous color work yoke sweater shown on both a male and a female. And then you have the dappled lace raglan pattern by James Watts, and he shows myriad photos here, and he shows the pattern on, or the design on himself, and then he shows it on a female figure. So we have both a masculine and a female figure here. At least you can see it represented both, right? So it kind of emphasizes the fact that it is a unisex pattern. That's my thing. I don't know. I wish that photographs were used, I don't know, sometimes just more effectively to show how a pattern is worn, what it looks like on different shapes, both male and female, especially if it's essentially being marketed to every human. Okay, so if it's you know, male, female, unisex, other than like, I guess I should say every adult human, then you kind of want to be able to see it provided from the designer. You want to be able to see it represented in that light. That's my thing. Okay. Now we all have varying opinions about that. I totally understand. That's my opinion. And that's just something I would like to see more of. And these designers here who are showing that, I just appreciate that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I like it. But that's maybe my, I don't know, my unpopular opinion. Let me know your experience with that, because I do think it is something that, actually I know for a fact it is something that a lot of us experience, and I've received lots of comments and messages about that, about how it is tricky to find men's patterns on Ravelry. I did note though, however, and I'm going to add this here. So we're going to go back really quickly to Ravelry. I'm going to record my screen one more time here, and I'm going to show you something. And this is very much one of those, like, obviously kind of situations. If you are looking for a pattern for a man, for a more masculine fit, something like that, if you go over here and you go to if you want it to be a garment, click on all clothing, and then gender, you can click on male and unisex, but then up here in the search box, what I did is I typed in men. And here you have a bigger, a much larger array of sweaters shown on men. It's just easier, more relatable if you are a man, if you're looking for a sweater for a man, if you just want to see more masculine options. Okay, so that's there for you as well by just simply typing in men in the search box. Now you only have 973 matches. I wonder what would happen if we did. Still, let's do man. 449. Guy. 24. Gentleman. 2. So I think the best bet so far, men. There. Yeah, now I'm seeing more here, that if I'm looking for a sweater for my husband, I'm seeing more right now that fits the bill, right? Whereas if I took men out and I simply filtered it by gender, male and unisex, and then I did my search, I'm seeing so much here that is not relatable, that doesn't seem to fit the bill for me, that it can become overwhelming, right? So simply adding men into the search box, yeah, better. It's just easier for me to visualize. So, well, there you have it. That's it for me. That is my one pet peeve, and a little bit of context and perspective on some of the other ones that rolled in. I don't know if the ones that I shared over on Instagram are still live over there. There were lots of really good ones. It was a lot of fun to read some of the things you guys have to say, but definitely let us know down in the comments. Be kind, consider others, and consider how your opinion might affect other people. You know, just be nice. But if you have some opinions or some hot takes or some pet peeves and you'd like to share them, let's have a conversation about it down below in the comment section. As always, you guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today and for your support. It's always fun to sit down and hang out with you guys. Until the next time I see you, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.